segue into what I want to talk about next is now we're looking at Diaz versus Masvidal, right? He called out Masvidal, West Coast gangster versus East Coast gangster, whatever the hell they want to call it. What do you guys think about this? Because I guess I'll be the bad guy in this one. It's okay. I can play that part very well. I don't understand the whole. And Nick's gonna hate me for saying this. I get the entertainment perspective from like the Diaz brothers, but like I don't understand how people like he's the baddest fighter ever, he's the best fighter ever, or like even with Masvidal, like they're both very entertaining and I love to see them. And like I said, I'll be the bad guy, but I guess I just don't get it.
That's why. You just answered your own question. It's entertainment value. Both of them are talkers. Both of them live their lives the way that makes sense for them. Masvidal probably had one of the greatest post-fight press conferences that there ever was. And Nate Diaz, I mean, I'm telling you, man, this is just a coming to the heads. And honestly, on paper, it makes so much sense to put these guys together because honestly, after this, then you're talking about title contention after this because, I actually thought, you remember we had talked about this previously, that I thought that Masvidal should be, in title contention very soon. And I think if he gets a win over a hot Nate Diaz returning to the UFC, dude, that'll spring him right up for title contention. I think it makes sense for both of them.
So I get the entertainment thing. I get that. I really do. But I guess my problem is like the whole like best fighter ever, baddest fighter ever kind of thing. Like it doesn't really make sense. So for instance, I guess I am kind of picking on these guys, but it's only for the sense of like people saying they're the best fighters ever and this will prove who's the best, this and that. I don't get that.
I think what they mean by fighter, and this conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, is you come across two demographics in this sport generally. Is you have athletes and you have fighters.
Yep.
And I think we touched on this before. Guys like Masvidal, guys like Diaz, they don't go out there to score points. They're not going out there to look good. They don't fight because it's cool. Like, they're going to fucking fight you. Look at Masvidal. Like, he doesn't care if it's in the backyard. He doesn't care if it's behind the scenes.
Sure.
Like, he's going to fight you. The Diaz guys, they don't care if it's in a casino, if it's in the street, if it's outside the limo. Like, they're going to fight you. They're fighters in that sense. And I think that's what people are referring to when they say they're like the most badass fighters or the toughest fighters. Like, they're fighters through and through. Before it was a sport, before it was their profession, this is what they were doing. I think for me, that's the way that I interpret it, because I don't think anybody's legitimately putting either one of them in the pound for pound rankings.
But they're not
disrespect towards either of them. I mean, I'm sure they both beat my ass. But nobody's putting them in the pound for pound rankings.
They're not divas. They're not looking for the glamour around the edges. I mean, they want to fight.
Right.
Bottom line, they want to fight. They're not like some of these guys, some of these ones out here are saying, "Oh, I'm the greatest ever." I'm going after the Floyd Mayweather look for everything. They're not following the Conor McGregor battle plan when it comes to fighting. They just want to fight. And those are the kind of people that absolutely everyone loves. And I've always thought that Nate Diaz is really more of kind of like the anti-hero.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, I get that. No, I agree with everything you guys are saying as far as that goes. Like I get these guys are, like you said, they're the fighter's fighter kind of guy, right? They're the guys that like the fighters want to see. They're the guys that they want to see throw down and everything. Like I understand that. The pound for pound thing, I would only argue that because obviously in Facebook world and social media world, these guys are like heralded as, some of the top guys. And I get some of the context. And like you said, these guys are always ready to throw down at a moment's notice kind of thing. I understand that. I do. I just don't, what I don't get, like I said, is some of the stuff about best this, best that, because like it or not, and I hate using this term, I really do, is before Nate Diaz, I feel like I'm going to get burned for this, but this is the way I see it. Here's the reality. A lot of I knew who Nate Diaz was before Conor, and a lot of people did. But I think in terms of like the casualness, and I hate using that word, but in terms of like the casual fan, a lot of people didn't really know who Nate Diaz was before Conor, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
people who watched UFC and watched MMA knew who he was, right? And I think same thing kind of with Masvidal. Like no one really knew who he was until he knocked out Till, until he beat Darren Till. That's what kind of like put him on that next kind of level, right? I knew who he was, and you guys knew who he was, but the average common casual fan did not know who he was. And it's like all of a sudden these guys are like the best fucking thing since sliced bread.
See,
and
I agree. You're absolutely right, because unfortunately it's kind of like what you would call Seth Petrozelli syndrome. You know what I mean? You remember? You remember back in the day. Seth comes in one day and sees, oh, I'm fighting Kimbo in the main event.
Right.
And everybody thinks that one main victory is going to propel your career. And I'm like, it's not about the one victory. I mean, you will go down in the annals of sports history for that one victory. Yeah. But it's all about on how your fights are set up after that.
Right.
And who you face and how you perform. And that's the problem. I mean, there hasn't been enough really top level consistency for either of these two to be in the top pound for pound badasses. Now, do they have badass associated with their name? Absolutely. But if we're talking, like you said, Josh, legitimate pound for pound as of right now, they don't rank. They don't have enough victories on top level to justify pound for pound rankings as of yet.
Right. And those are just facts.
Fair enough. We'll move on from this. We'll move on from my Diaz rant.